Welcome to Crafting with Kimberly. I am showing how to make a little nature gnome. The last class we actually taught were leprechaun gnomes, and that was very popular. So I thought, well, let's start off with another gnome, and since it's May, let's do a little nature gnome. The only thing that's going to be different than those of you that picked up a kit, you had everything here except for the nose. They have these cute little moss, they're called moss rocks. You can buy them online. I had gotten my first package at the Dollar Tree and they hadn't gotten them in again. So because I couldn't find them and I wasn't going to be able to get them back in this area in time to put into a kit, we're going to do a pom-pom nose instead. But that's why yours will look a little different. But Dollar Tree is a great place to look for stuff. This is a mop. And now, because they know so many of us crafters shop at the Dollar Tree, they just sell the mop tops. So you don't have to have the stick, because I've got a whole bunch of sticks I've got to try to figure out a project to do. So that'll be a project coming up. But you can buy just the mop. It comes apart very easily. With one mop, you can get at least 4 beards for a gnome out of this. So this is a great product. You can use any kind of sock. This particular time I chose to use, it's called the men's full cushion. So it's a little smaller, it's more like a little shorter than a crew instead of the tube sock. But it makes a great size. And the nice thing with the Dollar Tree is you can get 3 pair for $1. So there's 6 gnomes right there. So that's a great inexpensive way to do it. Also, shout out to Wegmans. Thank you very much. I went to them and asked them. I happened to be having a coffee one day and I looked at this and I thought, oh, look at that. That's a gnome shape. I bet you I could make a gnome out of that. So I went to them and asked them if they would donate some cups for our kits, and they did. So not only can you have a great cup of coffee when you're finished, or other beverage, when you're finished, you can make a gnome. So we're going to be using a coffee cup. Most times when I make gnomes, I use the coffee mate containers, any kind of round container about this high, I find works beautifully. And the nice thing about using the container is you have a nice solid gnome. It's not going to wiggle around. When I first started making these, what I did is when we purchased the rocks, you can use outside rocks if you have them, but you do need something to weigh it down. These are the Dollar Tree little glass stones. So you want something in there to weigh it just so it's not so tippy. But the nice thing about being able to use a bottle or a container, A, you're recycling, and B, it's giving you a nice sturdy body. In the beginning, I used to just put the rocks and then I filled the entire body up with fluff. And you really had to push it, move it around to get it to stay in one spot. So by using a nice hard bottle, that really gives you a lot of good sturdiness to it. And like I said, you can use anything that gives you that kind of a shape. So when you're making these at home, look around, see what recycling you have to be able to use. You can even just use, just to give it something for the bottom, use the top of your laundry soap detergents, any small little short bottles, yogurt cups, anything like that, just to give yourself a little base, get some stones. You can use sand, you can use rice, you can use beans. I've heard people have had problems with using the rice and beans about getting bugs in them sometimes, so I've just kind of avoided that, and I've used rocks. Normally, I use the big bags of poly fluff, the big foam fluff that you stuff things with. This time, the library had batting. And batting comes in big rolls and you can cut it up in any shape. So you can see it's flat, it's thick. You can cut it up into shape. So for this one, this for the first time that I used batting. If you were those that have gotten a kit, you have 2 pieces to make the hat a little fluffier. and you also have a long piece. This piece is going to be your arms and your hands. We'll cut that up. If you're using the fluff, you'll just stuff it and fill it. So to start with, in your kit also, I will go, if you received a kit, you had part for your hands and a hand pattern. If you don't have a kit, I just used like an upside down closed U shape. I also had petals, so we're using felt for this. You can also just take a silk flower and put it on there. But if you're looking for this look, I have blue for petals, and that's just kind of a long oblong shape. The center of the flower, just a circle, trace a quarter, anything like that. Also, I have the leaves right here, and that's again a long ovally shape. Or take your, instead of having them hold your silk flower, you can put the silk flowers up on the hats as well. For those of you that have a kit as well, I did go ahead and trace the hat on there for you. This is the first time that I have made this type of a hat. Normally I use a sock, or I take a towel or a blanket or a scarf or fleece and wrap it around and do different measurements and just patterns with it. But I thought, let's try something different. The way that I finally got this is I played around. It took me a while to get this the shape that I wanted. You can kind of see it's wavy and wiggly. But to get my pattern for that, what I did is I just took a brown bag and I just started drawing some shapes and getting some sizes. And to make sure it fit, before I put it on my fabric to cut, to do the gnome, I just cut it out of a brown piece of bag and then glued it to say, all right, is this kind of the look that I want? I didn't really like this, so I ended up making it wavy. But this is a great way to experiment, to see what type of hat you want, also to get the size of it before you actually have to cut it out on the paper. And you can see what it looks like. So to start with, we're going to take our cup, for anybody else, whatever container that you have. This is going to be the top. This is going to be the bottom. You're going to have your sock. What I do is, just so I know where I have to cut it, since it's going this way, take your cup, put it upside down, take your sock, put it all the way down and pull it through. I like gnomes with arms. You don't have to have arms, but I like arms because then they can hold things, which makes it, I think, even a little cuter. So to see where you need to cut, I'm going to cut it. You can see right here, it's hanging down. It's all covered. I'm going to cut it about there. I know that's going to give me a long enough arm piece. So I'm going to cut about there. So there's probably maybe like a little bit of an inch left there still. So even while it's right on the cup, you can take your scissors and just cut this right off. It doesn't really matter how straight or truly how even you cut it, because this part is going to be up under his hat, so you won't see it. You'll use this nice part, which is a cuff. And this is going to go on the opposite way. So once you've cut that, just set that aside. We're going to take the sock back off. What you're going to do is you're going to take your rocks, put them all into your cup, and get them all in there. Rocks, whatever you're using as your filler, get them all in there. You are then going to do the opposite. This now, your open end is going to be the top, your closed end is going to be the bottom, so your rocks don't fall out. So with your rocks like this, put your sock back over, smooth it down, flip it up. So now you've got a little bit of an edge. So what we're going to do, no one's going to see this part, but what we're going to do now is we're going to hot glue the top. If you did not have a glue gun, you could sew it. You could put it together. You could even also just take a rubber band, because like I said, no one will see this part. You could even take a rubber band or a piece of yarn or string and just tie it up. You don't have to hot glue it. Tonight we have our hot glue gun, so we're going to do that. So I'm going to just fold that over, run a bead of hot glue, and because it is hot glue, be very careful. I also have these silicone, they sell these at the Dollar Tree. They also sell them Joann's, Michael's, most craft places online. These are fantastic, so you don't burn yourself. If you don't have this, you can also use a chopstick or a dowel or a popsicle stick, something to kind of hold it down with. Because you're going to just fold that over and push it down. Just be careful so you don't burn yourself. I've got a little bit of an edge here, so I'm just going to flip it over this way, put some more glue down. I'm just going to pull and flip that down and hold it till it closes. Just making it neat. I'm going to do the same thing to this side. A little dab of glue, pick it up, fold it, and hold it down. You just want to make sure it's secure, nothing's coming out. Even though it's an open bottom, you know, your rocks will move around, but it's going to give you the nice shape and it's going to be sturdy on your table. So that is your gnome body. What we're going to do next is we're going to do the arms. Let's do the arms next. So you're going to take your sock, fold it in half. So this is the cuff. Fold it in half so you know you have an even piece. And I take my scissors and I just hold it up there and I cut through. So then that way I know I'm getting an even piece. If it's not 100% even, don't worry about it. But at least folding it over and cutting it like this will give you a pretty basic even part. Another nice thing to have, I have my glue gun on a silicone mat, so it keeps all the glue from hitting the table. If you don't have one of these, I would suggest hot gluing on wax paper. That protects your work surface and it's easy to pick up. Do it on a piece of cardboard, but with the wax paper, you can easily peel it back off. So now we're going to take the right side. You can tell that's you can tell that is the inside because it's all fuzzy. That's the outside. Put the right outside face up. You want your good side facing up. You're going to fold this in half. So you're bringing the bottom and folding it about halfway because we're going to end up making a tube. So fold that part over, and I do little bits at a time. I'm going to take my hot glue gun. I'm going to put just a little bit right here on the tip. I'm then going to pick my other piece off, lift it up, and fold it down. So as you can see, I'm making a tube. You can see that right there. I'm going to go through, fold this, like that. I'm going to glue all the way down. So I'm making a tube. And this will be the arm. Again, careful not to touch it because it's really hot. Popsicle stick, pencil. I just kind of push it all the way down. And then I make sure, kind of stick my finger in there afterwards, just to make sure that nothing stuck together, because you don't want the tube sticking. You want to be able to, like the Chinese wishing thing, you want to be able to put your fingers in there. Make sure that's down. So that's one arm. We're going to do the same thing to this one. Full part of it, put it face up, put part of it down. We're going to glue the cuff. And then now we're going to glue all the way through to make our tube. And again, it doesn't matter what this edge looks like. It's all raw. Don't worry about it. We're going to be closing that off, and that's going to be hiding up in his hat. So once you have those done, you should be able to completely turn it inside out. And then you've got your right side showing now. So you can see my seam I will put towards his body so you won't see that, and you have a nice arm. If once you undo this and you unfold it and you see little gaps, parts that didn't get caught, just go ahead and glue on there and glue it down so it's all connected. I'm going to do the same thing to this other one. Turn it inside out. And as you can see, my seam is completely in. So these will be the arms. Let's jump over, we'll just finish up all the arms. So let's jump over to our felt pieces. Many times I will make gnome hands out of nylons, pantyhose, which they have at the Dollar Tree too, if you don't have your own stash from way back when. I still wear pantyhose. I think I'm one of the few people in the world that do. But they make great hands. You just stuff it with the polyfil. We had felt, so you're going to take your hand piece, which again is an upside down U. If you did not have a pattern and you're making it yourself, look at your hand and say, okay, about what size do I want his hand to be? That's how I made my pattern. I just went from the cuff edge and did a big U. So we're going to do 4 of these. So you're just going to take your pattern to make. I'm a crafter, so I'm a hoarder. It goes hand in hand. So I always want to save as much material as I can. I'm going to put mine right at the bottom and right at the edge. So that still gives me like this whole top to be able to use for something else. Hopefully all of you out there can appreciate the hoarding fact. So we're going to do 4 of these. And plus, by doing it at the bottom, you don't have to cut that part out. It's already been cut. So we're going to trace our hands. We're doing 4 of those. I did all of I had old posters. I'm part of Center Stage Community Theater, and we had a whole bunch of posters left over from one of our shows that never got up. So I had a whole bunch left. So that's what I used. My patterns, cereal boxes, rice boxes, any kind of boxed food are great to use as patterns. You're just going to cut this out. You don't exactly get all the black off, just put that part on the inside. So as we cut our hands, So what you can do with this, if you don't plan on using this for anything else, you don't have any other projects you think you might use a piece of felt for, we'll be able to put that at the top and use as stuffing. So then nothing goes to waste. If you want to save it and use it for something else, you never know what, feel free. So we're just cutting these out. Once you have those cut out, you're going to take your hot glue gun. I didn't get all of my edges completely, so I'm going to put where I drew them both sides facing. So then that way I have nice clean lines on the outside. What you're going to do is you're going to run a very thin layer of glue right just around the edge. Keep it hollow. We're kind of making a tube again because we're going to put batting in there to give him stuffing for his hands. So just go ahead. You could also sew that if you wanted to, but go ahead and just put a line of glue. Get it as close to the edge as you can. And you're just going to nestle them together. Tap them down. Do not go through the bottom. Again, leaving that open, you're making a tube. And then I kind of squeeze it. You get little pieces of glue that sometimes comes out, so be careful. Just going to kind of squeeze around it. Do the same thing to the other one. And if they're not completely even, doesn't really matter. You can trim it after you glue it. We're not worried about it. So again, you want to make sure. Now, if you really wanted to, you could try to turn this inside out so you didn't have a seam, kind of like when you're sewing something and then you flip it inside out, you have a nice edge. I did not mind this edge. I thought it was fine. So I am not going to flip mine inside out because that will even make it that much smaller. So if you really want to do this again and you think you wanted a cleaner edge instead of seeing an edge like this, then I would say make the hand bigger and then you can flip it inside out. You're going to come over to your batting or your stuffing. You can even use cotton balls. And you're just going to cut a piece that you think is going to fit for the hands. If I were to fold that in half, that's going to be way too thick. So I'm just going to cut it in half, open my little hole there, and just stuff it in. If you can't get it in easily, take your marker or your pen that you were using and stick it in there. So you can see you have a cute little stuffed hand. Do the same thing to the other one. Opening it up, stuffing it in. This is the first time that I've ever used batting for a gnome. It really does pretty much work the same way. If you're having issues, cut smaller pieces and then just stick them in there. Here's a good example. I pushed it up a little bit too far. So I'm just going to reach up there, pull a little bit out, work it down. So now it's kind of to the edge. So now we have two little hands. Yay. Set our batting aside. We're now going to take our sleeves. Again, remember your seam, which looks like that. That's the good side that you want facing out. This is the side you want facing in. You're going to take one of your hands and having the outside facing in, just kind of pull it apart and stick it in there. So I'm just placing it in. And then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, well, how much of his hand do I want showing? Just move it up a little bit. I think I'm going to have probably, he's going to have a really long sleeve shirt on. So I'm going to have about that much. Once you get the hand to where you want it, pull one side back a little bit, put a little bit of glue, flip it back over, squish it down. You're just securing the hand to the sleeve. You can do the other side as well. Pull it back. As you can see, I'm pulling it back. Put just a little bit of glue. Pull it back over. And then now it won't fall out. It won't move around. You're going to do the same thing to the other one. Decide which side you want your hand to show. Put it in. Move it around to where you want it. Once I have one in, then I kind of look and say, okay, yep, they're pretty even. That looks good. Pull it down a little bit. We're going to secure it. Tap it down. Go to the other side. A little bit of glue. Secure it. Tap it down. So now we have arms. We're going to take some of that long batting again. The way I cut mine was so that you could fold it in half and then get your length. You'll see your hand goes in a little bit so it fills up the cuff. Kind of put it to here and say, oh, I need about this much. So you can see that it's about even to that. Like I said, with the batting, I just folded it in half. And we're going to stuff that in. If you were using the poly fluff, just keep stuffing till you're happy with the arms. I don't like to make them too thick, too floppy. You know, if you let a little bit stay there, it looks like he has a little bit of a wrist and then his arms. So mine's pretty thin, as you can see, which is, I like that because it lays closer, tighter to the body. Once you have your batting, if you want a thicker arm, put more batting in. Once you have your batting where you want it, and you have enough stuff to your arms, you're going to just open up the end and you're going to glue this shut. Again, this part, it does not matter what it looks like because your hat is going to cover it. But you just want to glue this shut. I'm pushing down, and again, you can see it doesn't look pretty. It's all frayy, but again, no one's going to see it. It's fine. We're going to do the same thing to the other arm. I'm going to measure, see how far I want to cut it. Put that aside, fold it. The nice thing about batting is that you don't use as much as you would with fluff. As you're stuffing with fluff, you can tend to really use a lot of fluff because it balls up. So the nice thing with this batting is it pretty much keeps its shape. You just move it around, finagle it to how you want it to look in there. I think that's good. I'm now going to just put my layer of glue in there and close it up. And squeeze it together. All right, our hands are done. We have arms and hands, yay. We're going to set those aside. When you take a mop apart, if you get just the one the mop head, there's a little black piece that goes through it. You can pop that right off and pull them out. I found with the mops that have sticks, they popped off very easily. With just purchasing the mop head, this was a little more difficult to come off. It was configured a little differently. So if you just pull out a few strands to start with, then you'll be able to just pull them all out. You want to take so for whatever you're using for your gnome, whenever you're making more, you want to see, well, how far do I have to go? So you take your string, your mop, you can also use yarn. I put it right to the bottom. I like it, if you want it hanging up higher, you can do that. I like it when the mop beard touches the table right to the edge. So I bring it up and I kind of put my finger there. So I'm going to need this. So again, I'm frugal. So I'm going to fold it in half and fold it in half again. And yes, it's pretty much the same size. So if it wasn't, I would just cut all my pieces the length I wanted. Because I measured these beforehand and I knew it was going to work this way, what you can do, pull one piece in to the middle, pull the other piece to the other end, and then so you kind of have an S shape like this. You get them even, and then you're going to know that all your beards, the mop is going to be straight and you don't have to give it a haircut and a trim at the end. So if you just layer it this way, I know, okay, there's one, there's two. So out of one strand, I'm getting 3 pieces of beard. If you don't want to do it that way, if it's too confusing, saying, all right, lay it here, even it up. Now that I have the one cut, or even if I were to just cut it there, you can take it, measure it, and say, oh, I have to cut here. And then bring it here, and I have to cut here. So I like laying it out like an S, because in that way, to me, it's a little faster. And I know that they're all completely even, and I just snip it there, so then I have my 3 pieces. So what you're going to do is you're going to go take your mop, cut all of your pieces. I do not put hair on my gnome, so I do not go all the way around the gnome. I leave the back open, but that is a choice because you get an awful lot of strands with a mop. So if you wanted, you could cut them and put it all the way around to the back to also have hair. If you're not exactly even, that's okay. As I said, you can trim it, because not all mop ends are exactly the same size. You would think they would be, but for $1, they're not. So you just want to kind of get them as close as possible. And it is much easier, cut them all to start with, so you know how many you have and where you're going to go with them. I just find it much easier to cut it all. And again, you don't have to be perfect with it. What you can also do, as in this gnome, I left the mop together. So he's got big, thick, chunky. Once we've glued this, if you really want thin and shaggy, up here. Once this would be glued on, you won't want to do it beforehand, you want to glue it on first, but once you do that, if you want to take these strings apart and separate it, there's about 3 strands on there. So this will give you an idea. Like I said, you don't want to do it before you glue, but then you would have it be basically double, triple the thickness. You'd have tiny little pieces. So that's a possibility as well. You could, as I said, you can use yarn, string, raffia, fur, whatever you want to use for the beard. Once you have all of your strands cut, you're going to look at your cup and decide, well, which side do I want it to go on? It doesn't matter here, but if you had a cup that maybe had writing on it, you would want to put the writing where the beard is so nobody would see it. I don't have any markings showing through anywhere, so it doesn't really matter where I'm going to start. And to put your beard on, you're going to put a little, you don't want to do too many at a time. Put some glue up there. Put your mop right up to the top so it's hanging down. And you can see, as this is a perfect example, even though I cut them all the same, see how much this is hanging down. So not all mop strands are exactly alike. Like I said, we can trim that. So you're going to go, if you're going to do just part way and not go all the way around, I would go pretty much halfway. You can go a little bit past, like maybe a quarter of an inch past halfway, but your good judge is halfway. I start out in the center and then I work out, so I kind of know where I'm going. So now we're going to take the time to glue them on. You can do it standing up that way. I like to lay mine down now that I know where I'm going. You can do a little line of glue and then drop them on. Like I said, if you're going to either have the silicone finger or a chopstick or a pencil, so you can push it down. And no one is going to see the top. This is going to be covered by the hat, but it helps to be even, going right up to the top. I'm going to lay those all down, and you can see where I'm doing my line of glue and putting on a couple. Just going to continue through. Again, don't worry if they're not all even. If you were having marks showing through, because some of the Dollar Tree socks are very thin, now is a time where you might want to pick it back up and say, okay, am I halfway? If nothing showed through and it didn't matter, just kind of keep going around in a circle till you've used them all. One trick, leave 2 strands, leave them aside, set them aside. So pick up 2 strands, put them aside for right now, and do all but those 2. And I'll show you why when we get to it. The anticipation build. And again, you just need just a thin little line. They don't need to really be glued down further, because you will have your hat coming over it and your nose will be there too. So again, I just kind of usually pick it up, go through, push a little bit more. This way, even though nothing was showing, this just shows how. And you're going to go to your other side. You could, if you really want a thick beard, you could do double layers. I find it a bit much. And especially if you're doing a gnome with hands. If you were doing a gnome without hands, maybe a thick beard would be really good. But with hands, you want to be able to have space to get it in there. You can use any color socks. It doesn't matter. You can mix and match. You can do themes. I have a really cute chocolate chip one that had a chocolate chip cookie sock. And then I made a chocolate chip cookie out of cardboard and gave him a glass of milk. All right. So now you can see I have my beard. Didn't take long at all. It's there, it's shaggy. A little bit more than halfway. Like I said, if you wanted to, you could go like a cousin it. You could go all the way around. Today, I'm not going to do that. We still have the two set aside. That's not imperative, but it's a nice little trick. So now that we have all of our mop, it's on there securely, we're going to set that aside. We are going to, for noses, many times I like a wooden nose. Those can be a little expensive depending on where you can find them to buy them, but I do love a wooden nose. You can use ping pong balls from the Dollar Tree. You could paint it if you want it to be a different color other than white. You can use that. You can use the nylons again, make a tube, stuff it, and then glue it on. For something different, I thought we would use, I like the moss green color since it's a nature gnome. We're gonna make pom-poms. So you should have in your kits, if you were able to receive a kit, you have yarn. What you wanna do, you wanna cut, I'd say don't skimp on this part, trust me, I did the first time and it was very hard. About this, I'd say about 6 to 7 inches, about that. Maybe, or about as tall as your hand. Do it about as tall as your hand. Cut a little piece off. A great, fast, easy way to make pom-poms is using a fork. You can wrap it around cardboard if you'd like, that works too, but a fork is a really neat way. Take your tines, you can see 2 on each side. I'm gonna put this one right in the middle. I'm just gonna drape my string right down in the middle. And I'm gonna just let it hang there. This is what we're gonna end up tying the pom-pom with. So that just lays down there. I like to hold it like this, just to keep it out of the way. You're then going to take your yarn. Now, I'm having you use a plastic fork because I have 3 grown children and I'm still losing forks. I don't know how, whenever they come to visit, I lose forks. So I didn't want to give you any of my good forks. So we're going to use plastic today. Because we're using plastic, be very careful. Don't wind too tightly. If you wind super tight, the plastic will crack. If you're using one of your good forks, then you can wrap as tight as you want. But you don't really have to wrap tightly to get a good full pom-pom. So I'm just going to fold this over a little bit, hold it with my finger while I'm holding this other string away so that doesn't get in the way. And I'm going to just start wrapping. You don't want to wrap it so tight that it's going to break, but a nice, good, even tension. And you're going to just keep wrapping. And for the amount of yarn that you received in a kit, use all of it, except for the piece that you cut off. If you didn't use a kit, you use it until you think it's the size you want for a nose. Gnome noses, to me, are what give the gnome its personality. So for me, the bigger the nose, the cuter the gnome. So there's enough yarn here where it's going to be a pretty, you can see how thick that is. It's going to be a pretty good thick nose. And I'm just wrapping, I'm trying to stay wrapping in the center so it doesn't spread out too far. So we're just wrapping it around like that. I'm coming to my end and just letting it hang there. If you want, you can take that end piece, tuck it underneath one of your strings so it doesn't come unraveled. See how I just tucked it in right there? So now it won't unravel. So now you have your piece of string that you had hanging down here. You're going to bring it up. I like to bring one part up, the back, up through to be in the front. So then I have either on the front or the back, I've got one side. You're going to tie that together as tight as you can. Keep the string in the center. Don't switch tines because then it will be very difficult to get off. But you're just going to tie that tight. Bring it together. You can see I'm pulling it. That's why you want to leave yourself a good amount, like at least as long as your hand. So you've got enough to really tie it. I tied it pretty tight there. I'm going to tie it, just tie one more time. Hold on to that string and then just push it right off. There is your pom-pom. Now, if you wanted, this almost looks like the moss nose. So if you wanted to just use that shape, you can use that shape because that's cute too. That looks like a moss nose. If you want to make it into a pom-pom, what you're going to do is while you're holding the string, you can see where you've wrapped around. I usually start right up at the top, kind of get your scissors in there and just start to snip. Be careful that you do not go through the string that you tied it with. So if not everything gets cut, that's okay. And you're just going to keep cutting and you're going to see the pom-pom starting to emerge. I like it as the moss shape. I think if I were to do this again, I would probably keep it in that oval because I think that looked really cute. But again, you're going to cut both sides if you've never made a pom-pom before. And cut both sides. Make sure you don't cut through the center or it will all fall apart. And you fluff it. So if you don't cut it all, that's okay. Now what they usually have you do with a pom-pom is they usually have you give it a haircut and trim it. Just be careful when you're trimming not to cut through that center string because again, it will all fall apart. I did that on my first pom-pom. And just move it around. You just want to kind of cut off the really wacky, wonky parts. But then you can see you've got a really cute little pom-pom nose. When you have finished that, you're going to go to the very center up towards the top. And you're going to glue the nose right there, top and center. So put a good amount of glue. Push it down to get it in there, hold it a little bit. And the reason we go to the top is most gnomes, you can see his hat goes over part of the nose. It doesn't usually hit the tip. It usually comes down. And that, again, that's what gives the gnome the personality. So that's why you glue it right up to the tip. And you can see I just ended up having my tie string laying up at the top. The reason we kept the 2 strings out, this is more important when you're using like a wooden nose, because a wooden nose isn't fluffy and you can't move it around. But I find with the wooden noses, you need to add one right on the edge there and one right on the edge there. And that fills in the gap. Not so much with the pom-pom nose. You don't need it as much, but I wanted to show you that little trick. We're going to glue it right next to the pom-pom, just so there's not a gap. So you have one little piece that's lifted up. So that fills in that little gap right there. Again, much more important when you're using the wooden beads. And if you wanted a mustache, you could give them a mustache too. But that is what we're looking like so far. Pretty cute. Your next part that you're going to do is let's get the arms placed, because then we're going to know where to put the hat. You're going to take your arms and again use the seams on the inside. I like to have them holding things. I did not glue this flower in. I just placed it in his hands. I can flip it out of there. And I personally did not glue his hands together. With this one, I'll be honest, I ended up being a little short, so I couldn't glue them together. So I just safety pinned them. If you have something big you want him to hold, other than being able to poke something in between his hands, like for Easter, I have his hands like this, basically like this, holding an egg. So anything you want your gnome to hold, like for St. Patrick's Day, a shamrock, 4th of July, a firecracker, you know, anything you want them to hold, you can glue it to the hands and then glue it on. For this one, I'm going to glue my tips together. So I'm going to have him overlap his hand just a little bit. So right on the very tip of, and again, making sure your seams are on the inside, right on the tip, I'm going to put some glue. I'm going to take the other one, making the seam face in, and put it right on top, and then hold those together. Squeeze those together and push it so it's together. I like working with hot glue. It's hot, it's stringy, but it is pretty quick. If you could do these with Elmer's glue or any other kind of white glue, but you would really have to glue it, set it aside, come back much later. The nice thing with hot glue is it's together. So you can see I have his overlap. You want to do this first, because unlike I did with the first time, now you know he's holding his hands. Now I know exactly where I can place them, where he's holding something, and how far out I want to go. So I'm going to look at him. I'm going to say, I want it to me, that looks good. His hands are in the middle. I'm looking at about this far. So it's almost like right to the edge of where my beard was, even a little bit under. But I'm going down a little bit because I don't want it right on his nose. So I'm coming down about to there. So you decide where you want your arms to go. Kind of hold them in place. If you want, you can lift the hair up, glue the arm down, and have the hair over it to cover it a little bit more if you're afraid your hat won't cover it, or just have the hat cover it. I am going to lift mine up, put it back that way, put my glue down. I'm still holding it to where I want it to be. Holding it down, smoothing it down. I smooth it this way. Get a few fuzzies. But you can see that's now attached. I can flip the hair back down over it and you don't even see it. So now again, make sure you know where you want your arms to be. You got to look at them, make sure they're kind of even. Mine go here. I'm going to flip my hair up. This is where I need it to be. Put my glue and fold my arm down. You can see how I smooth that out, fold it down over. So you can see the other is glued on there. I'm going to flop that hair back. So there you go. Now you've got your beard, your arms, your nose. Next up, the hat. Again, you can just take fabric, wrap it around, like you can take an old towel, any kind of long fabric. The scarves are great to use. You can wrap them around. I wanted this pointy, ripply shape. For those of you that had a kit, and I'll put my glasses on for this one. For those of you that had a kit, you have it already traced on there. I gave you the pattern for the hat in case you want to make another one. I hope you want to make another one. But you're going to just trace it. I have just taken my pattern, laid it down, traced with a marker, and then now I'm cutting it out. If when you've cut this out, your edges don't exactly line up correctly, that's fine. You can either leave it like that and it's cute and it gives them more personality, or you can trim it after you've glued the two pieces together. If you don't like the wavy pattern, just make a triangle or a bowl shape. Whatever shape you want. The way I made this pattern was for his hat to fold up. I like this jaunty little fold up. You can do that. You don't have to do that. So we're going to cut that. I have a pair of scissors that is dedicated only to fabric, which makes cutting a lot faster because some scissors are great, others very dull. If you have dull scissors, take a piece of aluminum foil, tin foil, fold it up about 3 or 4 times so it's a little thicker, and then take your scissors and just cut into it. That will sharpen your scissors. If you have really good sewing scissors, and you've only used them for sewing scissors, don't do that. Take them to some place to get them sharpened. I only use them for fabric, so I haven't had to have them sharpened yet. I have had problems with my thumbs and hands. So the pair that I have is nice. It's like a squeeze it together instead of putting your fingers in. These have been a lifesaver for my hands. So again, you're going to cut out your hat shape. Put your scraps onto the side. Again, this is a personal preference. I liked the raw edge that you can see on here. I didn't mind that I saw where my glue lines were because it indented a bit, and I didn't mind the edge. I thought that kind of gave it a little bit more character through it. I had it stay down in the back and I folded it up in the front. So I liked that. If you want a more pointy hat, then again, do it a little bit bigger and then flip it inside out. But I liked it this way. I thought it gave a little bit of character. You're then going to take your pieces and put them together as best as you can. I cut quickly, so I didn't get it exactly the same, but close enough. And then when you have your pieces together, right on the edge, you're going to draw your line with your glue and place it down. Make sure you don't go too far in, because then that makes the hat even more narrow and you won't have stuffing to go up there, but you also want to make sure you get enough in there so it connects. So again, you're going to just go through making sure you draw your line right on the edge and just go all the way to the bottom, just to the tip right here. We're not closing this part, we're making a tube again. Closing it down. Going to the other side, dripping hot glue on yourself. I've always said, you know, you can always tell a true crafter because they do not have fingerprints and they have glue gun marks everywhere. So again, coming all the way up again. I like to start up at the top so then I know I've really gotten my tip. Drawing your bead of glue. All the way to the edge. Holding it down, pressing it down. So now here's a great example of mine because I cut it out very quickly. This side looks really good. All my pieces pretty much line up. Guess what? If I turn it around, I didn't do too great of a job cutting. So what I can do now is I'm just going to look at that. I'm going to just even that up a little bit. Or like I said, you can leave it and give him some character. All right. So then what you want to do is you want to take your hand and kind of go up through, push on it a little bit, just make sure that's staying together on both sides. I'm just running my hand down through, and yep, I've connected everything. Because you're not gonna, once we attach this, you won't be able to take the hat off. We are going to glue the hat to the head. So if you have a part that is not gluing, just kind of spread it apart, put some glue in there and close it up. I think mine's okay. All right. We're going to set the hat aside. Let's do our petals very quickly for the flower. If you were using the real silk flowers are made to be taken apart. You just pull the top right off. They're fabulous that way. So how cute would that be with just having him have his hands there with the flower? You can glue that. If you don't want to do that, if you wanted to use the petals, what I did is I took my petal pattern and I traced it 5 times. So now we're going to cut that out. And we're almost done. We're doing good on time. We're going to cut the petals out very quickly here. Use any kind of material. Calico is cute, burlap is cute. Any kind of silk flower is cute. So you're going to go through, cut out all of your petals. This is as I said, this is the first time that I've used felt to do this. Usually I'll use, for a hat, I'll use a fuzzy sock, which is really cute. Or the towels, or the fleece scarves. They also, at the Dollar Tree, I just saw they had little, what they call baby blankets, very, very thin fleece. I don't know if you'd really want to use it as a baby blanket because it's super thin. But it would make a great hat. I'm also going to take my circle. You can use a quarter or just cut a circle shape. This is going to be my center. I will cut this out. And then I'm also going to take my green with my leaf. This is my leaf shape. You can freehand it. You can trace the shape. I use just 2 leaves. You can use as many as you want. I like to use a Sharpie, even though I'm usually marked for a week. People always know if I've been crafting that week because I have marks all over my hands, because I can't ever seem to use a Sharpie without getting it on my fingers. So now we're going to cut the leaves out. I like to have everything cut out, so once I start gluing, you know, that portion of the project, then it's all ready to go. I did not pre-cut my stuff because I wanted to try to do it at the same time frame that all you folks were doing it, so I didn't get too far ahead of you. So hopefully that's working out well. I'm cutting out my circle. I'm going on the inside of my lines for the circle just so the black doesn't show through on the yellow. Another cute thing to use for a center is a button, or those stones that we were using. That's cute as well. It's much, I did this one with it up onto the gnome already and then glued it. But if you want, I think an easier way to do this is to take your batting. I gave you the 2 pieces, and if you're just stuffing, you stuff your hat however thick you want it. Like I said, I thought 2 pieces of batting worked well. We're going to just put those up into it. You can take your pen, pencil, scissors, push up if you want it to go all the way up. And kind of stuff it up there. Now, so that gives you, it's not overly stuffed, it's just enough to be cute. You want to look at your sides and say, what side do I want for my front? The side has a little wrinkle, so I'm going to use this as my front. I like the folded up. So I'm going to just take it and fold it up so it looks like that. I like it long in the back. You could fold it up on both edges. I liked it long because it went down even further on the back of him. I liked it just hanging down low. But if you fold it up now and just taking it, it's almost kind of folding it even to the edges. I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue, put a little bit right on the edge there. And as I fold it up, that's going to hold it up there for me. So you can see that's what it's going to look like. Folded longer in the back, folded in the front. I'm also going to now place my flower to decide where I want to put my flower on his head. You can put it anywhere. You can put it all the way up at the top, on the side, either side. It doesn't matter. I would suggest going around the outside of the leaves and the petals, only because the glue does have a little bit of a tendency to show through. So I'm just going to place my first petal. There's one. And you have 5, so you can kind of lay it out where you think you want it to be, so you know where you're going with it. And that's how my flower is going to look. So I've got one glued down. Now I'm going to glue the others. Toothpicks are good too when you're using glue like this. Toothpicks are good to hold it down. And once you place your first leaf or your petal, you're going to know where to put your next one. I also like the leaf fitting under. So I'm going to just do my 2. I'm going to then take my leaf, because I want the leaf to just be poking out a little bit. If you want it to stick all the way out, you don't have to, but I'm going to give it like a 3D effect. So I'm going to put my one leaf down. I'm going to put the leaf on the other side as well. So now I have my 2 leaves, 2 petals, and now I'm going to do the rest of the petals. You don't have to go all the way around either. If you wanted your petals to have some dimension and kind of flop up, you can do that. I'm going to bring it down there. You can see I've got a leaf sticking out. I'm going to do my other side. Excuse me. And then by laying the leaves down, I can see where to place the petals. Spring allergies. And then I have my last petal. You can see I'm just putting a little bit of glue like that on. And if they overlap a bit, that's fine. And then I'm going to do my yellow. Like I said, you could put a button in the center. You could do a little flower. Have it be a lucky gnome and put a penny. So there you can see I have, matter of fact, you can see how I did my 2 for placement, put my leaves under, glued the rest of the petals on. And because this is already up and glued, I know how far to put it on. So I'm now going to take my gnome. First, I'm going to place my hat. I'm going to set it down. And I'm going to kind of pull it around and make sure I'm going to put them on where I want them. Now, if there was not enough batting, now would be the time to put some batting there for all the pieces. If you weren't going to use these pieces, stuff them in your hat right now, and that gives it a little bit more stuffing. And then what I do my front first, because to me that's more important, because that's where you're going to be looking. So I'm going to put my glue around the top a little bit here, just on the very tippy top of that nose. And I'm going to set my hat back down. I'm trying to not do this backwards, but I have to. And then I'm pushing that down. So you can see I've glued it a bit to the nose, brought it down around. Now I'm going to lift it up here. I'm going to put a little bit of glue kind of there because I want it to stay over his arm. I want my edges to stick out. Now is where you just kind of fluff stuff, move it around to where you like it. See where it needs to be glued. May not need to be glued in the same spots on one side. Like this side, I glued that down a little bit. I'm not going to glue that side down as much. So you can see I'm just kind of moving it around to where I want it. I'm going to put them face down. Now, if you like that look, you could flip the top. I'm going to leave it down. So I'm just going to kind of put a layer of glue down along the bottom here. Just set it down, gently tap it. If you don't like the hair or the beard sticking out, you can always lift your arm and stick it back under. Take off the fuzzies. I left mine where it had a pretty big opening, so like I can put a little mini flower pot would be really cute to stick in there, those little tiny terracotta ones. Anything that you want. Those that received a kit had flowers in their kits, so you can put a little flower. So this way you can switch things out, put it wherever you want it. And that, my friends, is a nature gnome. I hope you had fun, and I hope you make a bunch. If you needed to trim, you could trim. I like it fluffy. So I hope you have fun. Thank you.